Anything at that level, it's a matter of time. Yeah. I've been pretty lucky. I did actually
wear a helmet.
Yeah, I always wear a helmet. They're mandatory now, but I've always worn one while competing. I actually broke my neck in Japan. I fractured my C5, C6 racing. This was about 3 years ago.
Giant slalom?
Yep. Yeah, I fell and collided with another racer, and he ended up shinning my head like a gate, basically, at about 35 miles an hour. And
wow.
Yeah, it knocked me out, and I woke up, and you know, it was the first time I'd ever been knocked out, and I got pretty lucky. It was non-displaced, so I didn't have any problems. It was a quick recovery.
Quick recovery, yeah.
But you know, other than that, I think the worst part of that injury was probably taking years off my parents' life when I had to call them and tell them I broke my neck.
Yeah, a lot of people would say, that's it, I'm done snowboarding.
Yeah, you know, it was one of those things where it was such a blip on the radar, I forget that I did it. You know, it was about 5 weeks I was in a neck brace.
Well, when you're a professional athlete, you just have to put that behind you and go forward.
You know, it's one of those things that you have to get over, and you have to just keep moving on, and you can't
Now
hesitate.
that it's happened, it's not going to happen again, so, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you take your precautions and you do what you can, but.
Okay. We go back to the AST then. Exactly, people have asked me every year that I think that you've become a professional snowboarder. Is Zach Kay going to be in the Olympics? You know, like, I'm not sure how that selection process even works. How is it? What do you need to do as far as the AST, as far as your performance, and how do you get a spot in the Olympics from where you're at right now? What have you got to do?
Well, that's a great question, because a lot of people have asked that, especially with branching away from the U.S. national team. A lot of people have asked, well, you know, can you go to the Olympics if you're not a part of the U.S. national team? And for snowboarding and skiing as well, you can. You don't have to be a part of the U.S. national team to go to the Olympics. The way it works is there's a series of, for Alpine, there's a series of 5 qualifying events, and they're all World Cups that are around the world, starting in Limone Piemonte in Italy. And then we go from there to Telluride, Colorado, and then we go up to Stoneham, which is in Quebec, in Canada, and then we go back to Europe after that for 2 more races. One will be in Kreisberg, Austria, and the next one's in Nenda, Switzerland. So.
And that's all these 5 races are yet to happen?
These are all leading up to the Olympics. These go from December to January.
Of this season?
Yep.
Okay.
And then what they do is you try to get, you know, if you make a top 4, you're guaranteed an Olympic spot.
Top 4 in overall in all 5 races?
No, in just one.
If you are top 4 in one of these races, you've got an Olympic spot.
What if pretty much be guaranteed.
What if you don't bother to compete in the rest of, say you get top 4 in the first Olympics?
In the first race?
Yeah. Do you still have to at least compete?
No, you don't have to.
Wow.
But where that might come back to bite you is, say you get a top 4 in the first race, and then 2 other people get 2 top 4s. Then it would, if you tied with somebody, because they're probably only going to give out 2 to 3 spots for men to go for alpine snowboarding. So, you know, if you tied with somebody and it came down to a tiebreaker race and you didn't compete in the other races, well, then you don't have a result for them to go off of.
Okay, that's for the United States spots.
That's just for the U.S.
So even though you qualify for the Olympics because you finished top 4, that doesn't mean that you are going to go as an American competitor to represent the United States.
Well, you'd have to go for it. I mean, you can't go
for
it.
I mean, you may not go to the Olympics.
You may not.
Even though you qualified in the top 4, let's say they've got 10 guys who've qualified top 4, they're only going to take maybe 4 of them or something like that?
Yeah, it's the best out of, you know, they take probably your best 2 results overall.
Okay, so it's still, even though you've qualified for the Olympics, the United States may say, well, we've got a lot of guys and we're only going to take these 2, and then you look at who did the best.
Yeah.
So there's basically 2 qualifying. You got to qualify as far as the United States team goes, and then you got to qualify for just to be in the Olympics first.
Well, yes, the way it works is they have the U.S. Olympic Committee sets a international Olympic criteria, which you must meet. You have to have a certain number of FIS points, which I think is 100 130 FIS points or 120 FIS points, and then you have to have at least a top 25 in a World Cup.
Okay.
And so that's just the international. You must meet that. That means that you can't have, say, a small country where there's only one snowboard racer who would go anyway. That's the
still has to meet that criteria.
He has to meet that criteria.
Got it. Okay.
There's an international standard.
Yeah.
Then for the U.S. criteria is, beyond that. You have to get a top 4. If you don't say there's nobody in the U.S. that gets a top 4, then it goes off your best results. So it's important to make all the races. Because you want to give yourself the best shot, and you don't want to leave any doubt. You don't want it to have to go to a tie-breaking committee or anything.
Okay. So are there other American competitors in downhill racing who are still on USSA who could potentially take a spot instead of you or someone else on the AST team?
Yeah. Right now there's essentially 2 teams.
Okay.
There's the U.S. national team, and then there's America's snowboard team, which is the team that we've formed. And both teams are equally as good. The caliber of riders on both teams, are equal. So,
okay, so who? Is it strictly based on your performance?
Strictly
in World
based
Cup?
on your performance.
It's not like, well, since Zach's not on the U.S. team, USSA.
No, it's a blind numbers, strictly based on your performance.
There's no politics involved?
Oh, there's always politics, but they try to stay away from politics because it is such a touchy thing. They have a coach's discretion, but it's rarely, if ever, used. And if they're going to use it, it goes to a jury of, I think, 5 or 6 people that have to make the decision because they don't want to end up in a lawsuit. They don't want to just say they can't. It's set up so they can't say, okay, well, we like you and we don't like you. Because you're
your
part of the
point
team.
standings are what you have to fall back on.
And they don't really particularly care because if you qualify for the Olympics as a member of AST or a member of the U.S. national team, it's all one team that goes to the Olympics. It's the U.S. Olympic team. So you have to wear the U.S. Olympic clothing and,
But basically, you've got better sponsor.
We do.
And so you're kind of at an advantage because of the sponsoring. You're not fighting over the scraps in the USSA.
We're at an advantage right now because, unfortunately, with big organizations like that, you get lost in the mix as an athlete. There's so many teams under the umbrella for USSA. They have all of Nordic skiing and alpine skiing and snowboarding and all these different sports that, as an athlete, it's better to be a part of a small